Joining us now is our good friend, covers the NBA for Spotrac. He's Keith Smith with us back on Jake and Ben. What's going on, Keith?
For consider it's late July, still quite a bit in the NBA. Normally we're headed off in the summertime now, but we still got quite a bit to resolve itself here.
Yeah, Keith, this has been one of the crazier summers. I mean, you look at LeBron's the most famous basketball player on the planet. He's not the best player anymore, but among top 10 players, I can't remember a lot of years when this much talent switched teams, moved around, or even just the most famous names in the league. I mean, the fact that Luka moved within the last 18 months, but Giannis, this has been a ton of turnover. The NBA feels like it's going to look a lot different next season.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. And I think what happens in the NBA, especially now, contracts generally run about 4 years in length, maybe 5 for some of the better players. But with the way the aprons are and all that, we're going to see the league reset itself almost every probably 3 to 4 years. And this feels like one of those big reset times, like you said, LeBron and Jaylen Brown, and then we had the Thunder move on from some key rotation players. LaMelo Ball was traded. Giannis, it could go on and on. But yeah, absolutely one of those massive summers of movement around the league.
So how do you think it's going to work in Philly? Think it's does it vault them into contender status?
I think it's really interesting. I think the kind of way I've been looking at it is, if we remember back when the Heat first came together with LeBron and Wade and Bosh, I think there was something like 10-10 in that first year, and they weren't looking all that good, and everybody's kind of wondering, all right, I guess this isn't going to work, and then they eventually figured it out. I think this group's probably going to have similar bumpiness early on. I don't know that they'll be 500, but I don't know that they're going to come right out of the gates and just beating the pants off everybody, because I think there are real questions that they're going to have to figure out. And really the only way to do it will be on court in meaningful games where you have guys like LeBron and Brown and Embiid and Maxey and Edgecombe, and then even off the bench, a guy like Anthony Simons. These are all guys who are used to having the ball a lot. They're high-usage players. And it's going to take a little bit for them to figure it out. And that's ultimately probably that, and figuring out if they can cobble together even a league average kind of defense. That'll ultimately be the measure of success for this team with how they win games. But, yeah, it's going to be a really interesting experiment to see how this all comes together. But I think eventually, after the early bumpiness, it'll probably be okay.
Keith, I don't know where I fall on this. But as we cover the NBA, I look at this Knicks team that just won the title, and I think this is probably, and maybe I'm just not far enough away from it, this is probably one of the more flawed champions I remember in a while. And now I start to ask myself, with how difficult it is to build a great team because of the restrictions with the tax aprons, with so much turnover, do you think we're going to start to see less or fewer perfect teams win titles going forward, considering we've had 8 different champions in 8 years?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, San Antonio and Oklahoma City are going to do their best to kind of break that there and just kind of, pull out of it where they can get into a place where those teams are really just sustainable winners, maybe, can pull off multiple championships in a period of time. And when you have all the talent the Thunder has, and they seem very willing to kind of replace those mid-tier guys, and when you have 1 million draft picks to go out and get the next group of guys, it becomes that much easier. But and then San Antonio obviously has Wembanyama. He already left potentially some money on the table to ease the Spurs roster building issues. I think those teams are set up to really make a run at being there year over year over year. But I think if we go all the way back, I think it's back to the early 1980s, that even in the Western Conference that we've seen back-to-back Western Conference Finals matchups against the same teams in back-to-back years. That tells you even the parity that exists just within that conference. So I think the system is set up to, you can be on top for a year or two, but then unless you're willing to really pay and go deep into this apron, you're going to have to break things up eventually. And I think that's kind of where we'll ultimately see this. And I think to your point of, I don't think we're going to see many teams that come in where boy, that team was really flawless. Now I say that, and the Thunder were pretty awesome 2 years ago. The Celtics were pretty great the year before that. So it's, let's see how it all plays out.
Kind of in the Jazz conversation, and I think they will be better. They will be a team that has taken a step forward in the West. What other Western Conference teams do you think have gotten better this offseason?
Yeah, I think let's see where it goes with Minnesota. I'm not fully sold that moving everything out that they did to bring in LaMelo Ball is going to make them necessarily better. So we'll see. I think the Jazz, if we go back to the trade deadline to now, I think they're better. They're certainly a deeper team than they were, and the feeling, at least from everyone I've talked to and around the league, is they're going to go for it this year. There's not going to be any of this, well, we're playing pretty good, but let's kind of pull the rug out from underneath everybody and just kind of pivot. I think they're ready to go. I'm not entirely sure about the Lakers either. I think they're very different. I don't know if they're necessarily going to be a lot better. I think they'll probably be a fairly similar team. So it's kind of a weird year, and for the first time in maybe decades, it feels like the East may be just as strong at the top, and then maybe the deeper overall conference and real quality teams, which is, like I said, it's been a very, very long time since we could say that.
Keith, so you were talking about windows being shorter than they used to be, and they've really always kind of been probably shorter than people recognize. But there were dynastic teams, whether it was the Bulls in the 90s or the Lakers and Celtics or the Warriors in the teens. When you have a team like the Jazz lose Walker Kessler, who, had they had Walker, invested in him, you've got Jaren Jackson Jr., you've got Lowry Markkanen, you've got these young players in Ace Bailey and now Darren Peterson. It felt like that was the beginning of this window opening. Until they replace, and we're fans of him on the show, Yusuf Nurkic, with a better center, I don't think you can really say the Jazz are serious contenders. And what I've tried to warn Jazz fans is, if they don't make a move quickly, getting a Jared Allen or somebody else to step in and fill Walker Kessler's shoes, the window of this era with Lowry and Jaren Jackson Jr. could close, and they could just pivot to the next group of, well, let's wait till Ace Bailey and Darren Peterson and Keontae George are all ready to play together and win. That can come a lot quicker, I think, in today's NBA than people remember from the Stockton and Malone era. Do you think there is risk of that if you continue to wait and put off, of saying, hey, maybe the next generation or the next group, that you kind of just never actually arrive? You never even try to open the window?
It's absolutely the way it works. When I've talked to multiple GMs around the NBA, they tell you the hardest thing in their job, it's not rebuilding a team, it's not building back up, it's knowing when to go all in and make that move. Because if you go too early, maybe you never quite get there because your guys weren't ready and you made the all-in move. They didn't have this stuff left to kind of supplement and rebuild, on the fly around it if it didn't really work. And if you wait too long, like you said, maybe that window never opens the way you thought it would. Now, I think the Jazz are in a really interesting place where I think for them, with the team they have, I think they've got a chance to be pretty good in the West right now, but I think they're holding back purposely, making the all-in move. Let's see what we have in a guy like Darren Peterson and Ace Bailey, and can Keontae George, can he repeat last year's success? What does it look like when we have all these guys together and we're really trying to win games before we start saying, all right, we're ready to not only beat the Thunder and the Spurs of the world, but can we get past the Nuggets and the Timberwolves and the teams that have kind of been there in front of them for a little bit? So I think they're certainly going to take that approach. But you're absolutely right where, if it's another 2-3 years from now, we may be sitting here saying, all right, well, they never got there. But now here's the good news. You have Peterson, you have Bailey, you have George. You've got, I don't know, a bunch of eighth graders we don't even know about yet that might be on this team. So I think they are set up to really, really have a pretty good run of success here. It just may not be with the guys that everybody kind of knows and loves from the team right now.
So my new favorite nickname in sports, Keith, is El Cheapo for Tom Dundon there in Portland. I think that's incredible. What is he doing? What's his end game behaving the way that he is with that negotiation with the city?
Yeah, I really don't know. If we kind of separate it into chunks, when you look at it, he's doing exactly what he did when he bought the Carolina Hurricanes, which is kind of take all the money out of the off ice, off court stuff. One of my favorite movies, it's not a great movie, but I love it, is Moneyball. And I love when they ask you, why are you going to pay for soda? Billy wants to keep the money on the field. Well, he's done a little bit of that. He has paid for players in Carolina, and they worked out pretty good because they won the Stanley Cup last year. So we'll see if that goes. But then you have the other part where he's now in this very public, messy fight with the city of Portland. And that's, Portland is I know they have MLS teams and whatnot, but they're a one major league team city, much like Orlando, where I've relocated to. And I know if the Magic were ever on the move, what it would do to the city. And I know people in Portland are starting to get a little bit worried about it, but they're also saying, hey, why should we as, taxpayers pay to build a new stadium or renovate our stadium for a billionaire? He's got all the money. Why shouldn't he do it? And if he says he doesn't have all the money, maybe he shouldn't be owning an NBA team. So none of this is good for Portland, which, they should be gearing up to celebrate their 50th anniversary of their one NBA title, which was in 1977. That should be a big deal for them, and they should be having a lot of fun. And instead, they're sitting here wondering, are we still going to have the Blazers in a few years?
An article came out today, Keith, about the potential for the investigation between the NBA, the Clippers, and Kawhi Leonard and aspiration could potentially, if they don't agree to a settlement or the punishment and they want to appeal, that this could stretch into 2027, which would, obviously surpass or go the beginning of this year. With this trade pending, with the Clippers seemingly trying to start a rebuild, the Raptors wanting to maybe win a championship in a wide open East, what do you think Kawhi wants? Which is, I know he's maybe the biggest mystery we've had in the NBA in the last 20 years. What do you think his goal is? What do you think his motivations are?
It does seem to be that he's excited about returning to Toronto within a couple of days of that trade being, announced, even though it wasn't, ultimately finalized. He was in Toronto for Kyle Lowry's kind of ceremonial one-day contract to retire as a Raptor, and then he was at Summer League, where we haven't seen him in years, rooting on the young Raptors players that were there. So I think he is committed to, hey, let me get to Toronto. And I think there's got to be some sense with him, and I wouldn't presume to know this because, Kawhi doesn't talk to anybody, and anybody who says they know what he's thinking is, they're guessing as much as I am, but it does seem like he is in a place where it is, hey, I just want to focus on basketball. I just want to play hoops. And I think, he knows in Toronto he can do that. He was very kind of insulated there. They really made sure it was just about basketball. It obviously worked out great as they won a title. So I think that's where we're at. But, yeah, it's, much like everybody else, I'll add to the chorus of how are we still doing this at the end of July, a year later on this whole thing, and, where are we at? And I know Adam Silver said, soon, and I guess the investigation portion is wrapped up, and now we're moving into whatever. But, yeah, now it's a question of, all right, if we're going to have all these appeals and everything else, and that stretches into 2027, are we just going to, is this trade just never going to happen? Or are we just going to, go back? And that could cause messes for a guy like Brandon Ingram. It's certainly a situation I don't think the Raptors or the Clippers, and really, quite frankly, a lot of the rest of the league are very happy to be, even tangentially involved in.
Keith, you are always so generous with your time. We really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Keith.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. That's Keith Smith. Our friend makes the magic happen for Spotrac.